Good morning, everyone. This is Rama On Writing, coming to you live from a beautiful, sunny Sedona, Arizona. Tom is having a wonderful retreat this week. It's his special group. I think it's a 7-day retreat. Everyone is riding up a storm. Nobody wrote what they thought they would write. So it's a typical Tom Bird retreat. There have been more than one book written per person. It's a phenomenon that I know Tom, was right on with. They've gotten revisions done. I imagine that today Tom will be doing some soul reads. And I think that some of the authors may come away with 2+ books done. So this could be a new venue for all of us if we can sit in a seat for 7 days. I'm not one of those kind. Maybe if it was a bike seat, I could sit on it, but it's not one of my skill sets. Today we're going to talk about writing second books. We're going to talk about some of the things that we've learned from our first books. We have a number of people on that I know are actively writing first books. I know that there are a number of authors online that know they're writing sequels or will be writing sequels. And we do have Deb McTiernan, who is just about finished her second in a series of 8 or 9 of her Lily Noble series. So I thought she would be a good guest to give us an insight, because she's very, very picky in how she's gone about this process. And I talk to her a lot, so I know her process. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is explain why it's important to write the second book and the third book and the fourth book. And this is a no-brainer, right? If we're going to exert any effort to promote a single book, wouldn't it be better if we actually had 2 books to sell, or 3 books, or 4 books, or 5 books? Okay, so the point being, you get a bigger bang for your buck. So every hour of marketing time has more potential to yield more purchases. So very important concept for all of us to understand. I'm not sure if any of us fully understood this when we went to our first retreat and thought how difficult it was to write that first book. So just a real important heads up, many of the things that we encounter on the first book, we will not encounter on the second book. Once you actually have a book published, your whole attitude and opinion and confidence level changes. And it's no longer, can I do it? It's, which book should I do next? And that's a challenge as well. I mean, I've started 2 or 3 different books before the right book came to me. And sometimes we don't see the obvious. I mean, I think that if I sat back and actually looked at this process, I would have seen, oh, well, of course this one has to be the second book, but originally I didn't. And for all of you that have encountered such a thing, it's like swimming upstream. You know that you can get there, but man, it's really difficult if it's not the right book. And I think that we've had a couple of authors comment over the last few months that we make these decisions long before now, and maybe even before we incarnate here in this plane. We make these decisions and agreements that these books need to come out. And they do have a sequence. And once you start to see the sequence, it becomes rather obvious. And you see the breadcrumbs kind of as you move from one to the next. There's certain things that you need to look at and add. And you have to, if you're writing a sequel type series, it's important to have continuity. And that's why I wanted Deb on, because she is the continuity maniac with this process. And I've heard all of the stories from her. I speak to her regularly. She's very excited about the second book. And it's very exciting to talk to someone that's just really, high powered with what they're doing. So I'm going to unmute Deb here, and I'm going to let her kind of talk a little bit about what the process is. First off, Deb, many of these authors missed your author interview for the first book so long ago. So give us your name, tell us what the first book's name is, and tell us tell us a little bit about the audiobook production of the first book, because I think getting that insight is always good for people as well. And then we'll move into the second book. And if you get stuck for not knowing what to say, I will ask questions, okay?
Why don't you do me a favor and start with one question?
At a time. What is your name? What's the name of your first book?
Okay, my name is Deb McTiernan, and the name of my first book is Lily Noble and Actual Magic. And I just put the copy of it over there. Otherwise, I'd hold it up and show you. It's about a story about a 13-year-old girl with amnesia who's sent away to boarding school and discovers she has magic powers. I had the book written before I'd met Tom, and I had an agent that was interested in it, and then she stopped emailing me back. So then when I found Tom, I was really excited about the process. After I joined up with Tom, I'd read the book a number of times before I joined on with Tom, but then after I joined on with Tom, I got my style edit, and the style editor seemed pretty excited about the book, and I got a really good style edit review. After that, I went through the book about 30 more times, sharpening up the dialogue, honing in on the scenes, going backwards through the story to find all the continuity breaks and sewing them together. And I just really took my time about making sure I had the book as close to perfect as I could get it before I handed it off to the second editor and the formatter. And I'm glad I did that because, and what I did while I was doing that was I read the book out loud to myself every time, so I could hear how it sounded inside a reader's ear. And that really helped. That's one of the things that really helped me get through the story and get it to the point where it became an easy read for the reader. That's one of the things that's come up in all my reviews, is how easy it is to read my style of writing.
That was a phone call.
In the jungle?
Yeah, sometimes you need a phone reminder that, keeps you on your toes. Although I heard one the other day that was a dog barking. I say, oh, that sounds good. Although at my house, every time the phone would ring, the dogs would start barking in unison. Okay, I'm sorry.
So where do you want me to go from here?
Why don't you give us a brief, and this is a little off topic, but since I have you here, why don't you just give us a brief insight into what you went through with ACX and the audiobook creation, just to give people a little insight.
Okay. Well, if you check on Audible or ACX, there's a phone number that you can dial. And I'm really big into communicating one-on-one with people on the phone. And I got a guy on the phone with ACX, and he helped me set up my request for what I was asking for in a narrator, and what kind of negotiation I was willing to make to get the audiobook cut. And I was really lucky because I kept talking to these guys on the phone. And I got 32 people that wanted to interview to do the read for Lily Noble. because when the request would come in, I would have them go to my website and just download the ebook from my website. So everybody knew what they were dealing with when they had the book, so they knew what they would have to read and narrate. I narrowed it down to 6, and then I took it down to 3, and then I picked the one I thought would do the best. And she really did a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful job of the narration of the book. She really did. Her name is Maria Hostage. She lives in New Hampshire, and she's on my Facebook page, and we communicate back and forth every day. I made a more generous deal than I originally thought I would be making to get the audiobook done, but I'm really pleased with, I mean, you sort of get what you pay for, really. And she did a beautiful job. She really did. And I've since gotten a 5-star review on my Audible account on that audiobook. And Maria was the one who found it, and she called me, or she Facebooked me and told me about the review, and I went on and checked it, and it was a really great review. And she said people don't usually do reviews on Audible, so I thought that was really cool that something unusual happened for us in that. And I stay in contact with her, and we've been back and forth talking about the second book, which, Rama, oddly enough, is now down to 92,000 words, so it's practically a short story.
This has been a standard joke with Deb and myself. You know, one of her books is about 3 or 4 of Rama's books, so it's a different strategy. So Deb, why don't you explain a little bit of how you went about organizing book 2 and what you did?
That's a really great question, because I thought I had this cat in the bag when I started working on book 2, and oddly enough, I didn't have a clue, which sent me running back to the drawing board, and I found some tools that really helped me. I started writing book 2 and found out there were pieces of books 3, 4, and 5 in there, which I chopped out and put in other files. But I went back to the drawing board, and I went on Amazon and started looking, and I found some books that were really, really helpful. This is the first one. It's called, can you see that straight, or is that backwards for you?
No, it's coming through fine. Okay,
it's called Outline Your Novel, and then there's also the Outline Your Novel workbook, and they're by an author by the name of K.M. Whelan. There's her name right there. She has a website called helpingwritersbecomeauthors.com. And she wrote Dreamlander, and she's actually in the process of turning Dreamlander into a series. And so I've sort of been making this journey following her on her website as she's going through. And she has a bunch of criteria that she has, if, you know, for you to determine whether or not what you want to turn into a series is actually going to work for you. And one of the criteria is, are you madly in love with your characters? And I truly am. The other books I bought from her off Amazon are this one. It's called Structuring Your Novel, Hands-on Help for Building Successful Stories. And then there's also the workbook. So with these 4, and you see bookmarks and stuff sticking out of all these books. So I'm actively using them. She blogs on her website about how to create characters. She talks about viewpoint, omniscient versus first person versus different points of view. I happen to be an author that I choose to structure my books in several characters' points of view. That way the reader gets all the information, but the main character doesn't have it. And so the reader is like locked into the story. And also by putting the story in several different points of view, you're able to give the reader more insight into who your characters really are. And then I also have this. This is my big black book. This is something I've created through the years. It's real thick. Let's see, it's like 2 or 3 inches. It's got pages and pages of notes on how to tell a story. And And this all started when I bought a book through Writer's Digest called Scene and Structure. And inside the back of one of the books, there's like, it's got 6 or 7 books in the series. It's about characters and dialogue and scene writing. And then one of the books had something called a story map. And I bet if you went on Barnes and Noble, you'd be able to purchase whatever the updated version of Scene and Structure in it they have is. But in the back of one of the books is called a story map. And I've taken their story map and I've sort of blown it up because I took a couple of years of screenwriting from someone in California for 2 or 3 years. And I blended the story map from the back of the Scene and Structure book in with all the things I learned in the scene writing courses I took. And so I've got little things to tell me what to do in which chapter and how to break out the scenes and which main character or which character's viewpoint to put the story in at that point. I can give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Like for chapter 5, it says 2 to 4 scenes all in hero's viewpoint, in which he struggles with a shocker question, and the shocker question is something you put into the story right at the beginning that helps the secondary character or characters solve it. And then it talks about putting a story quest in the middle of the story. And this is the thing, because story lags in the middle of a book unless you have a story quest or something that they have to immediately accomplish in order to get to the end of the book. So these are just some tips and tricks I've learned through all the time I've been writing, which is since I was about 12. And I'm much older than 12 now.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Deb, what's been the biggest challenge with book 2?
Wow, that's a really great question because there have been so many.
You don't have to pick just one. You can give a smattering of various challenges, because I think that may be a better approach. Because as I say, there are a lot of people online here that are into this process or will be into this process. So giving everyone a heads up would be very helpful.
Okay, the biggest challenge I faced was trying to stick everything into the story at once. Don't do that. You'll only confuse yourself and you'll make a mess of the story, which is what I did. I'm in the final phases now of doing the edits and rewrites and revisions of book 2, where I'm sharpening up dialogue and scenes and stuff. And a couple of tips I can give you when you get to that point. First of all, when you start writing your second book, just write it. Write whatever comes to you, write it out however you're going to write it. You might want to consider getting maybe one of these workbooks, though, to help you develop an outline for you to start, for you to have a starting point, because it asks you questions like in this outlining book, teaches you how to ask what if questions to lead you to the next thing. What is your protagonist's objective? Who is the main opponent? What is an early disaster that will befall your protagonist and force him out of his normal world and into the main conflict? This helps you get kind of kick-started with your story, and then there's, as you go through the workbook, it kind of leads you through how to get to where you want to go. Plus, I had all my other pages in my big, giant, thick notebook here. But mainly, just write what it is you need to write. Once you get through the first draft, and the first draft actually took me about 18 months because I couldn't figure out where I was going with the story. But once you do that, then Tom's got a trick that he has a webinar or a thing on YouTube. Tom has a trick where he talks about using different colored Post-its, red for a hot scene, yellow and orange for medium scenes, and blue for a cold scene or a cool scene. These little buggers help you with your pacing. So once you get your story all figured out, then what you want to do is break it down by the chapters you've written and figure out where the because Tom has, he says you, at the beginning, you want to start with 2 red scenes in a row. Every red scene has to be followed by a blue. This is mainly just pacing because you don't want to exhaust your reader in the story to the point where they have to put the book down. That happened to me reading Stephen King's Cujo, oddly enough. That dog kind of drove me a little bit crazy, and I had to keep walking away from the book before I could actually finish it. But Tom breaks your story down into beginning, quarter point, midpoint, 3/4 point, and the end point. And if you watch that webinar, that'll help you understand pacing the story better. Once you figure that out, if you come across a scene that you have a red post-it on and it's not a hot scene, think about what you need to do to amp up that scene. Sometimes it may be just sticking a thunderstorm in that scene, or maybe you need a character that's going to give conflict to your main character. Or maybe like what I did in book 2, I stuck in shadows and ghosts and gave them more meaning than has ever been given to those things before, and I joined them in a way that's very interestingly dark.
Deb, how much did book 1 dictate what happens in book 2?
It helped a lot, and actually what I had to do in order to figure out where I was going with book 2 is I've gone back through book 1 and I've gone through each scene and pulled out everything that's in that scene that I know is meant for future books. And I've got this big card file upstairs that I've started of book 1. It's got the characters in it, it's got the meanings of the characters in it, what they're meant to do, the arc they're meant to make through the story. And actually by going through book 1 and pulling that into a file, I was able to figure out what book 2 was meant to be. It's not as straightforward of a process going from book 1 to book 2 as I thought it was.
You know, Deb, at this point, I'd like to just provide people, while everything you said is fresh in their minds, an opportunity to ask you maybe some questions about what they're going through. And if there aren't any questions, you know, I have other authors that I'm going to unmute that I'd like to hear some of their experiences and stuff as well. So first off, I
just wanted to point something out. Behind me here is a map of the island in the story in book 1. And clipped to the map are like characters' birthdays, site names, things that are coming up in the story. Everything's in different colors. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that behind me?
You can get an idea of what you got there. You know, it's almost like you've created the components of the video game there so that you know, can stay on task and see where everything is.
Well, that's a big giant like post-it flip chart. Behind that, I've got family trees in the story. I've got timelines, the different characters' timelines in there. I'm a real visual person, so I need things graphic where I can see them. So I'll be doing something like I'll be crocheting or cooking or something, and an idea will come and I'll pull up that chart and flip it open to whatever I need to add to a timeline or a family tree or the magic within the story, because there's pages and pages of just the magic and how it descends through the family trees.
Okay, anyone, you know, want to unmute themselves and ask Deb, you know, maybe some questions to help you in your process? Or if not, I have other authors that I'd like to have speak about, you know, what's going on with their sequels. Well, I don't see, there's Tom. Okay.
I've got to go pretty soon. Yes, Deb, did you leave the book for a while? You seem to be like in the story daily before you didn't lose it. When I put my book down, it took me like a week to get back and remember what the story was about, even longer. Did you stay with it constantly?
That's a really great question. Actually, no, I didn't. And that was part of the problem I had. because I left it for about a month because I was really not sure what I was doing with it, and I just left it alone. And when I came back to it, I found that I had to re-review everything again. That's when the card file started popping together from book 1, because I really needed to burrow deeper into the story to figure out where I was going with it. And that's when I started that card file.
Yeah.
And since then, I've had it kind of every day.
Okay. Well, I count that off month as actually working on the book in my subconscious. So sounds like it worked out really well.
Probably.
And I like the visual.
The map? Are you talking about the map?
I'm talking, yeah, those slip sheets. I did something similar to that. I did a timeline, and it started to turn into a little bit of a poster board, and it actually helped. That was the way I got back into the book. I wrote a brief summary of each chapter and put it on 5x7 cards, and that way I could shuffle them the way I wanted them.
One of the things,
But I wrote what they call an editorial outline.
one of the tools that's helped me a great deal is Pinterest. I'm a real visual person. So on Pinterest, I have all these categories that have my character names on them, and places in the story and some of the magic that happens and stuff. And what I'm finding is as people are finding out about the book, they're finding me on Pinterest and following what I put up. And I have several secret files that they can't see because there's things I don't want the readers to know just yet. But I'm engaging readers and people with my Pinterest stuff that I post from Pinterest. And you might want to try checking on Pinterest because visuals really help me. They may be helpful to you too. They may be like a kickstart to a scene or something.
Okay, can you do the chat thing on where we at? Put up your Pinterest name, because I haven't seen you up there.
Everything's under my name, Deborah McTiernan.
Okay.
Or Deb McTiernan. But just Google that and you should be able to
okay, my internet's failing. Got to sign off.
It was nice talking to you.
Okay, I know Jill had a question, so I'm going to unmute you. Jill, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
Hi.
Hi. I have a couple of questions. Is your audience young adult? We'll just.
I thought initially my audience was 11 to 18-year-old girls. It turns out my audience is everybody.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. And how many books in your series do you plan on writing?
At this point, it's somewhere between 5 and 7.
And do you feel your main character will be the same main character throughout the series?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Not.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, in regards to screenplay writing, do you feel like you're telling your story more in your dialogue than in description?
I feel like, well, the reviews I get on Amazon, a lot of people say my writing style is such that they can see it as a movie.
So you have lots of dialogue.
I have dialogue and description. But I think the screenwriting actually helped me sharpen dialogue and recognize that actually that was one of my writing gifts. I have a gift for dialogue, and it helped me hone down and zero in on description.
Oh, okay. I think I did 5 questions.
That's okay. Do you have any more?
You were quick. So tell us, I'm not familiar with your book series. So can you just kind of give me a quick pitch?
Let me get the book.
Okay. Oh, I'd love to see your book. I'd love to see the cover. And also, I'd love to see the book pages.
This is the book.
No, I'll see if I can bring up a cover that I can share my screen. So you keep on talking.
Okay, I'm going to read the blurb on the back of the book so you guys know what it's about.
Good.
After the collision claims her mother's life and left, wait, let me start again. After the collision claimed her mother's life and left her with a memory full of holes, Lily Noble is sent away to boarding school on the gloomy island of Raven's Landing, Maine. Though feeling exiled and abandoned by her father, she is determined to fill in the blanks the accident left in her mind. When she meets the hypnotically charming and strangely intense Morosky Skaggs, his unnatural curiosity and careful attentions toward her raise her suspicions. His stories don't add up. Lily's search for the truth beneath his lies causes her life to take a thrilling and terrifying twist. What she doesn't realize is the closer she gets to revealing his dark secret, the closer she comes to regaining her memory and unmasking her mother's murderer. But something else, something far more sinister is lurking just off the coast. It's been there waiting for her. Lily's quest for answers puts her and those around her in mortal danger. And once she starts down that path, there is no turning away from her destiny if she can survive.
So it's a murder mystery.
No,
Oh, it sounded like a murder mystery. Oh, okay.
it's you can't. It's something. It's more of an adventure. It's not really it's something she has to solve, but it's more of an adventure than what I would call a murder mystery because she has amnesia. So she doesn't know anything other than her mother's gone.
But she could still, even if though you'd have amnesia, well, you'd still be able to explore. Anyway,
she's not even from the area where her mother died. She's sent away to boarding school. So she's in a whole different place.
But she can, so she can't relive the memories because she doesn't have the memories, correct?
Right.
But she still has a mother that's dead, and she's still wondering why her mother, she thought her mother died in an accident, but what you're telling us is that the story is that we're going to find out that she really didn't, well, she died in an accident, but it was a premeditated accident and somebody killed her for whatever reason, and that's in the story.
But in the story, Lily herself is actually being hunted.
Oh. Okay, so that the story is whoever killed her mother wants to kill her.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you.
Oh, can you show the inside how your and tell us how many points you did and what's the 12 point? Did you do the type, the house, the size, and
this is the size of the print. I don't know if that helps.
I think that the book is let me see if I can get a copy of it up here. I think it was 12 point, I don't remember the font, but here's I think I have a copy of it here. Give me a second to see if this.
Because I'm going to use the same font and everything for all the books. This is the title page.
Did you use more than one title page, Deborah?
No, just one.
Just one?
And here's what I did. There it is. Here's what I did. I went through some of my favorite books in the genre I thought I was writing and sort of built the pages I wanted in my book from what they'd already done in theirs. So, I didn't go from starting from scratch. I went from something I knew and made it to fit what I wanted to do.
Okay, it's a 12 point Times New Roman.
Roman?
Mm-hmm.
I just went with the standard stuff, didn't I, Rama?
Yeah. This is our default font and point size. Some authors want something more elaborate, so they choose something like Arial or Garmond or, whatever font you want. 12-point is the most common size used. Occasionally an author will use a smaller point, and occasionally an author will use a slightly larger point. But I'd say, 85% of the books that we do produce are a 12-point.
I just wanted to go with what I thought would be familiar to the reader.
And you used the cream paper?
Yes, I did.
And did you like it?
Yes, I do. It's a softer read.
Yeah,
I think the white is too harsh.
And also for chapters, what did you do to separate your chapters?
Let me show you. I gave each chapter a title. Here's my table of contents. I don't know if you can see that.
Let me get to a chapter here.
Chapter
Okay.
1.
I just noticed that Deb does have, a little break here that she's used, so she might do that periodically in addition.
Those are scene breaks.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what her chapter break looks like. Very close to the top of the page. Not, anything,
Half page.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because she has a long book.
She is a long book, exactly.
It's 97,800 words.
So, yeah. So you've got, that's over 350 pages or something?
319.
319? Okay.
And one of the things that Deb and I talked about early on is the titling of her book, and we determined that Lily Noble was an important character, and we wanted her name in the title. Initially, this was not something that Deb had done, and it was through our kind of comparing it to the Harry Potter series.
Absolutely.
We determined that this would be the best approach for her.
Actually, that was Rama's stroke of genius. I claim no credit for that.
That's great.
So when he starts talking, listen to him, because he has ideas that pop out of him that are really helpful. It changed the complexion of the way I thought about the whole book and the series too.
And she put up a Lily Noble fan page on Facebook. So as she mentioned, it did, change the way she looked at marketing her book. She looked at the writing of other books. I was actually surprised when you asked the question about whether Lily Noble will be the main character throughout the series, and she said no. And I said, interesting.
It was because, unless I misunderstood what Deborah said, it wasn't first person, it wasn't omniscient. I heard that she was speaking through different characters. So
Right.
that's
Lily is the main character.
yeah.
Lily's the main
Didn't want her
character.
to know what was going on.
Right.
That's what I heard.
Plus, the reader gets to engage more with the characters as they get to wiggle around inside those characters.
Mm-hmm.
They get to know them a whole lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any other questions for Deb before I start unmuting other people a little bit to hear some of their experience?
Hello. Hi, this is Leah. I have a question.
Hi, Leah.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Deb. Thanks for sharing with us this morning. I just am in the process of getting my first draft for my first novel in a series into style. So I'm at the beginning of the process of getting it published. I started writing my sequel in the first retreat I attended after I finished the first one, and now I'm going back to finish it up. And what I'm having some kind of trepidation about is that for the first novel, I've thought about it for years. Like, it was something that was on my mind. It was ideas, it was sort of outlining itself in my head before I put it to paper. And now I have a much vaguer idea about the second novel, and I'm feeling that kind of anxiety about, well, what if, because it's only a month or so past the first one, I'm not able to come up with the story. I was wondering what if that was a similar thing. I've heard that about people who do albums, bands, their first album they've been working on for years, and then their sophomore attempt is, rushed and not as good. And so I just wanted to see if you might talk about if that was your case, how you might have gotten through it, any kind of insight you can give, please. And I'll mute myself.
Okay, that is excellent what you just brought up, because I encountered the very same problem you're encountering now. And what I did to solve it was I changed the timeline. I moved it out a year. Lily is now, she's been in the school a year. She's home on break. And she's getting reacquainted with her old friends from her school that she was in before she went away to Ravens Landing, Maine. Don't be afraid to change your timelines. Don't be afraid to change things in your story, because actually that gives you more flexibility and helps you write your way out of that corner it seems like you feel like you've written yourself into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that the timeline is good. I mean, I know I want that book to come out, a year after the first one. It's just that I kind of felt like I was on the high of completing my first book, but it wasn't that I completed it in the weekend. It was, most of it was already written before I got there. And now as I'm going into the second retreat, I'm like, oh, it's not going to be the same experience. What if I can't do it?
Just know that you can do it, and you will do it, and keep thinking that way, and eventually the story will come. I thought I was going to get the second book written in a year too, and it's 2.5 years later. Don't get down on yourself for thinking you're behind. Don't crush your spirit under this. That can happen easily if you let it. Just relax and think about the story, and let the story reveal itself to you, actually, and that'll happen.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's kind of the sort of encouragement I feel like I need to hear. And I was kind of feeling like it was just me.
No, it isn't just you. I got stuck in the very same circle you are in right now. And you just have to know that because you want to do it, it can be done. You can do it. You absolutely can do it. Just stick to it. Write something a little every day, even if it's just a paragraph or a couple lines of dialogue. But just give yourself the freedom to let the story reveal itself to you. Don't be so strict with yourself, because that's when you actually struggle more.
Thank you.
Sure. And Rama, you can give people my contact information afterwards if they want to talk to me or send me an email or something, okay?
Sounds good. Victoria, you have a question or two.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Gosh, it's nice to see you. How have you been?
Oh, I've been really good. I've been good, and I'm just so proud of you. I want to tell you that.
Oh,
I'm so
thank
proud of you.
you.
Gosh,
Victoria
I can't wait
and I
to
are
read
old friends. We go way back.
It's so interesting that, and I'm so glad I'm on the call, because I had never thought in my wildest dreams that I would do a sequel to my book. It's called Conversations with the Fairy Realm. And it's every time I read this book, I am moved to tears by everything that gets resolved at the end. And I just talked with an editor friend of mine. She said, oh my God, you are so excited about this book. It's got to be a sequel. And I had never, ever, 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 ever thought about it. And so I don't really have a question. I just wanted to share a little bit. I thank you for the information that you're giving, because I'm doing exactly what you said to do. I'm going back to the first book. I've got to acquaint myself with this first book, because I wrote it 3 years ago, to find out, you know, what is the second book going to be all about? And I'm actually starting to write it already. And
That
I have no
file
idea.
catalog helps. That file catalog really helps making one of those.
What's that, hon?
Making that file catalog I was telling you about with the cards, out of taking each scene and the characters from book one, that would really help you, because
so that's what I'm going to
merge.
Yes, I'm going to be going to Tom's retreat in a couple of weeks, and so that's what I'll do that then before I go, so that at least it's fresh in my mind. And I'm running through, because what I'm doing is I'm revising another book, and so I'm going back to this book for 15 minutes and then going back. So it feels like piecemeal, and I'm feeling like I'm going back to, oh, it can't be 2 years. It's got to be a year, and I'm questioning the flow of the book already. And thank you for telling me just to download the book, period, and just it'll all flow. And if that first book flowed, this one is going to flow as well. Don't be so concerned about all my concerns, and just get out of my own way.
Well, and let the timeline reveal itself to you, because when you think this book is taking place may not actually be when the book is taking place, and it'll show itself and you'll figure it out. Just trust, you guys, you got to trust your instincts.
Right.
Whatever's meant to come out is going to come out.
It said 2 years, and I thought, it can't be 2 years. There's nothing going on. I mean, there's too much time that lapsed. So I went back to 1 year, and now I'm not quite sure. So I think I got my head in there. And so I think I'm going to just start at the retreat again. And I may start all over from the very beginning. I don't really care. I just want the whole book to flow. And
just
but
give it time.
I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
That is the main reason why anybody should write a sequel. If you're that excited about a book and it makes you laugh and it makes you cry, that's the book you got to bring to a sequel.
Yeah. And I already can see it in a movie. I mean, I can see it in the movie theater. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, that seems way too wow, you know, to really think that it's possible. But I don't know.
You've got to see it that way.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Keep your enthusiasm up. Let your mind go to wherever it's going to go that makes you happy.
Yeah. And I just want to say, at this last workshop I was at, I learned about Tom's, about those, how to organize a book, like you said, with the different, and it has just been I'm really enjoying, I'm really, really, really enjoying the edit process. Before I was like, you know, my first book still isn't out, but there's, you know, it's interesting, but I'm almost like forgetting about the first book. I'm going to go into the second ones and third ones and all that stuff, because then they'll get out when they get out, you know.
Well, actually, for me, in the edit process is when the second book started revealing itself. Because I'd written the first draft, but then what I found when I was writing was I was writing more to the front end of the book.
Oh, interesting.
I thought that was, and that happened actually with book one too. After I thought I'd finished, I ended up writing a whole new chapter one.
Wow.
So don't be afraid to let the book, you know, don't be so stiff and stern with yourself that you don't let the book come out of the box.
Right. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, I'm going to move on because I want to unmute Tom Carroll here. He's also writing a sequel, or he's writing a second book, and he's really the person that in our discussions motivated me to you know, come to this topic. So initially, you know, and I have to set the foundation here. Initially, Tom was going to talk about the platform that his first book, you know, was along those lines, and maybe moving into some teaching situations as a result of that. And there appeared that there was something he needed to do before he was comfortable moving in that direction. And I think that that's the book he's writing right now. So Tom, you can correct me if I made up that story and that has nothing to do with what's going on. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the experience and what's going on with your second book?
I'll do my best. First of all, I want to congratulate, I guess, just express my admiration for Deb, the professionalism, Deb, with which you go about the business of writing. Um, I can't say I know all that many successful writers or have been in conversation. I haven't heard the process like that. But anyway, obviously you have honed it down to a science, and you make a job of work of it, rather than just simply waiting for inspiration. So all that to say, hats off.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, writing a second book, the platform. This has all been it's an interesting experience, writing this book and being involved in these webinars, particularly Tom Bird's beta group. It's so important that we do become fluent with the whole business of social marketing. But I found that it completely derailed me from a serious writing effort. I had gone to a second workshop with Tom and had an idea for what I wanted to do with that. And that kind of got blown out of the water with the beta group, because it was so focused on promotion. So what I've tried to do is take all the good things from that, all the important things that we need to know about social media, and now put that in a box and put it aside for now and begin focusing on another book. Rama teased me, I won't say unmercifully, but repeatedly, about taking so long to complete the little book, that is my first effort. But at the end of the day, there's a good reason for that. And I'm really pleased now, as I go back through that I can read it and not find problems, errors, and just poor thinking or spelling errors or whatever. I've got a good little book and nothing to be ashamed of. So now, as I begin reeling up on this process of a second book, I have confidence in the idea of taking my time. So, Deborah, once again, I thank you for what you just said about not being self-incriminating or whatever the term would be, not writing ourselves for the slow pace that it seems to take to get the second book off the ground. I have tried to explain a couple of times, what the second book is about, and I found that in each instance it was a mistake. The book's going to need to speak for itself. It's I don't know if it's this way with everyone with their books, but in this one in particular, for me, it's something that I sort of need to keep to myself and get it on the page, get the manuscript done. And I believe, Deb, you hit on this as well. You get it out and you get it down, and I think this is a common experience. Once we've got that first draft, then we really begin to see what the arc of the book is going to be and how we're going to make it interesting, palatable to potential readers. Which brings me to another point, and that is that even with all the emphasis that we've placed on social media, on the promotion, on the selling of our book, I found that I don't really want so much to be a best-selling author my greatest desire is to write a really good book, to write something that I feel is important, to communicate some ideas, to explain some things that I don't think have been well explained. How many people will be interested in that remains to be seen, but it will be very satisfying to me to have finally laid it out in a way that makes sense to me, to have made the argument, to have made it, I believe, convincingly, and and decisively, so that in one stroke, with the flopping of a book down on the table, I can say, here, there it is. If I were to say a little bit about what the book is, if this were about politics, but it's not, if it were political, it would be me talking about a Republican conservative perspective, and then talking about a Democratic or a liberal Democratic perspective, and some of the different extremes of those two positions, and explaining why, in my opinion, they were both right and why they're both wrong. So the book would then have three different perspectives: the right-hand politics, the left-hand politics, and then that overarching point of view of what they're trying to achieve and how it can't be achieved short of some sort of collaboration between the two, and then possibly even a fourth stage, something that escapes both sides of the argument, some larger considerations. And with that, I think I've probably confused myself as well as anybody trying to listen here as to what I'm attempting to do. I don't know if any of you remember a little movie called My Dinner with Andre. I don't know if you call it a cult film or what. Deborah, I believe you're nodding your head. For those interested in the topic, it was wonderful. It was a genuine feast. And I need to go back and buy a DVD now. I had a VHS tape at the time, and I wore the thing out. But you would listen to that, and they just simply went over this topic and fleshed it out from so many different directions. But the point was that it was so unusual. The whole thing was set at a restaurant. These two men met for dinner, and the whole movie took place at the restaurant table. The waiter would come and go, the conversation would ebb and flow, but you never left that restaurant until the end of the conversation, and then one left first, and the other one summed it up in his mind. You heard his internal remarks, and the credits started to roll. And so as I began to write, I think of that. I think of this as a protracted conversation. And so that's really it. I want to lay out some ideas and talk about them from some different perspectives. And I find that a very small percentage of people are really interested in these topics, and yet everyone is impacted tremendously. And so to be able to speak about these things and explain why they're important to everyone is part of the book. And then to back away from that with somewhat of a disclaimer, with a recognition that there's a reason why people aren't interested at this point. We all grow up at different rates. That's not the right. We grow up as we grow up, and we grow into interest and understanding of different things about our lives at different rates. And that begins to sound sort of elitist. What has something we have to remember is that there are certain things in life that are very elitist, and we want them to be. The example is made of if you're going to go see a basketball game, do you want to watch me on the basketball court, or you want to watch Michael Jordan? If you're going to look at a painting, do you want to see some silly watercoloring that I have done, or do you want to look at Van Gogh? It's obvious that there really are reservoirs of great talent and understanding. And we could say that everyone with practice, with time, could become a great painter or become a great athlete. But that's not true. We can certainly spend a lot of our time practicing and we can get better. But this topic that I'm interested in is something that begins elitist and ends up being all-inclusive, because it is it's about our life and about what it means to be a human being. And in the end, we cannot avoid accomplishment and maturity. We can approach that from a variety of angles. We can excel in it and make it a primary interest. But one way or the other, we're all invited to excellence and able to be excellent as human beings. So some of us come in, this is a group that can maybe appreciate a lot more the idea that we do come into this life with an emphasis, particular emphasis and strong suits. So some of us come in able to discuss, to write about, to explain these things and to live them out, more importantly, to embody and live them out. And they help the rest of us in the process of our own maturing. So anyway, that was a pretty good ramble, huh?
Well, let me ask you one question. How much of the second book is borrowed, based, I'm drawing, I can't think of the right word, but how does the first book, become the base for the second book, if at all?
Well, it comes in an odd way, in that I write the first book and I see how few people are interested. Some people that I actually respect, some people who of accomplishment, read it, and out of something more than just generosity, they said, "This is good." They said it in a way that I was able to believe that it wasn't just gratuitous. But the majority of people are just simply not interested in it, and there are people who are on the spiritual path who are not interested in it because they're doing something different. They have their own interests and their own methods, and they're busy pursuing those. A more interesting thing is how many people who are friends and family were aghast at what I had written. They didn't believe that I had left the camp, that I had betrayed the faith. And interestingly, we're so totally unwilling to engage with the material in the book to realize that it was really a fleshing out of exactly what they believe. So the second book then is sort of would be the definitive explanation of why this book is both the completion, the fulfillment of what friends and family do believe and appreciate and aspire towards, and then on the other side, an explanation and an invitation to those who have yet to come to an interest or a conclusion one way or the other. The first book sort of establishes the ground, if that makes sense. I thought you were going to ask how much of the second book had been written. Seeing as how you didn't, I'll answer that question. And I think Deb hit on this, in our writing, in our note-taking, in our blogging, we put so much down, and if we're smart and have tucked it away, and if we've not been victim of too many hard drive crashes, we've got all that material to pull back or to look back into. And so a good deal of the book has been written in that respect. Now I just need to bring it out, bring it forward, and bring it into this conversational context.
Thank you, Tom. I think, after listening to you, I'd call it more of a companion book than a sequel, perhaps. I'm not sure if it needs classification, but I think it's a different process than what Deb is doing, and that's really why I wanted you to speak, because you're not alone. I think a lot of us are writing books that do draw from the first book, but really aren't a sequel kind of thing. So I've got one other author that I know is in the midst of two other books, and I'd kind of like to hear how they progress from one to the next, if at all. So Lynn, I'm going to unmute you here, and we're going to have a more in-depth interview in a few weeks, so you'll have an opportunity again to talk about some of these things. But I know that you're in the process of two other books at this point in time, and just give us a little insight into how they came about, whether they draw on each other, and maybe how, since you're very fresh with your completion, how that affected your level of confidence.
It's so interesting looking back at the process. I mean, there are decades of process involved here. That sense of writing a book first emerged when I was 17. And it wasn't until I did my doctorate that I did the first version of it. And it was included in my dissertation. And, 10 people read it. No, actually, it went better than that, because it was cited in other people's work about resilience and the value of journaling and doing autobiography as a healing tool. Then, when I retired in 2008, I still had a really strong desire to write a book. And so I wrote a children's book, and that went nowhere. It sits in my computer. And I continued trying to write. In fact, I went to I created some writing retreats for my husband and myself, and we'd go, because he was a reporter, we'd go away for a week, and he would write and write and write, and I would play solitaire. And so it was highly frustrating. And then when I saw that Tom Bird was speaking about a mile from here, I said, well, I have to try that. And it just opened the doors. And so I went to his first retreat in November, a year ago, November. And the book came out in one day. And, I'm glad that he did the beta group, because I kept facing my own resistance. And so I would write, and then I would stall, and I would write, and then I would stall. And so I went ahead and I went to the March retreat, and that went very well. And then I went to the August retreat, and that's when I thought I was working on book 2, because book 1 was just being polished and ready to come out in September. And book 2 ended up totally getting shelved, and book 3 became book 2, and is what I'm working on right now. So let's see, with getting the book out there, I also found that all the marketing kind of stuff is I was really willing to do that for a while, and I had the launch, and the launch was fun and successful. I had a big party here at the house. I did a reading out of the book. It was a real confidence builder, and watching people's response to the book and how kind and loving people were. And then two things happened. One is I got really tired of the marketing and said, this is not me. I am not getting to write. I have this desire to write, and instead I'm doing little detail things. And so I quit doing the marketing. I changed the schedule from, doing tweeting every day and all that kind of stuff to once a week I will tweet. Once a week I will do Pinterest. Once a week I'll blog. I tend to not blog. So I brought it down to a manageable level that could keep my interest level up but not make me unhappy. And then the writing came back. So now I'm going in November to the next retreat, and I'm really excited to hear that a lot of you are going too. It'll be fun to connect with you. It was interesting hearing what people said today about writing novels, and I noticed I kept going, oh God, I don't want to do that. Oh, the consistency, the character development. You're talking about stuff that I taught when I taught English. Oh my God. And you know what scares me about that is so often when I go, oh no, oh, you know, and you hear people do this, oh, I'll never do. And then they do it. So I'm not going to say anything about novels. I do appear to be writing, you know, the theme of the first book was suffering leads to inner peace. And the next book is really about spiritual experiences. And so I don't see the flow in them. And I don't, you know, after I went to that retreat and saw the second book get totally pulled and set aside, I, at this point, don't know where I'm going, but I am willing to put one foot in front of the other and take a chance and kind of enjoy it, because it's an adventure.
You know, Lynn, thank you for sharing this. You know, I think that we've got, you know, a number of different processes. I mean, every rider is different. Every story is different. You know, every bike ride is different. And, you know, and I think that's the beauty of our lives. And so I guess I was fortunate to have 3 very different processes, you know, to talk about. And I'm just going to share a little bit about my process, because I think I have another take as well. First off, like Lynn, you know, I've kind of started 2 or 3 other books, and none of them really came about. And it wasn't until I, you know, actually sat down and came to a retreat again where I actually got a draft of a second book out there. And, you know, I wasn't really sure of how everything built on each other until the third book started coming out. And I haven't written it except mostly in my head. I have dabbled a little bit. But as I started to think about the third book, everything started to make sense. The first book, like the little crumbs in each of the book, and how, you know, you leave these breadcrumbs, and they, you know, they come together at some point. And I think that, you know, in a situation like what Deb's doing and what I think Jill is working on, you know, those breadcrumbs are parts of the story, and sometimes you pick them up in the next volume, and sometimes they might not be until, you know, another volume further on, but you lay the crumbs out there so that people wonder about that character. And then when that character, that situation comes up, it then, you know, they get satisfied that, oh, okay, this wasn't just a false trail that was put there. I did sense it. And that's what I've started to see a lot in the second book, finally, is what is the real purpose behind it. And I find that talking about it, you know, talking about the different parts of it to my friends, you know, maybe a little bit out of context, but by doing that, I start to see it more clearly, and I start to see what has to be filled out. And, you know, maybe I talk with more passion than I write, I don't know, or maybe that's my process, is that I write down it briefly, and then I talk about it to fill it out, and then I go back and actually fill it out a little bit. So I just kind of wanted to share that. The other thing that I want to share for all of us that are either, you know, through a first book and are saying, no, I'm never going to write another book again, or, you know, kind of have that inkling, is that once you've gotten that first book published, any book is possible. And you feel that, you know, you start to feel all those ideas that you've had in your head for all these years, I could write a book about that, or I could write a book about this. And, it's possible. While the first time through, you don't have that same level of confidence until, somewhere in that timeline when it becomes real to you. So that was the other thing that I wanted to share is that, once you get that first book done, all those other ideas that you've ever thought about and you thought about sharing with other people then become possible. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. Not to say that I'm going to write all those books or that we have to write all those books, but the possibility that we could sit down and we could write that book about Tai Chi or write that book about Kona coffee or whatever, right? So with that said, unless there are any other questions, comments, anyone else wants to share their experience, Jill, I'll unmute you, and I'll also unmute you, Victoria, since you waved your hand too. Jill, you're first.
Okay. Deborah?
Yeah.
You became my interest when you were talking about that you raised questions. If you could just give me some examples, because I think I know what you're talking about, but I'd like to hear it from you.
I was trying to figure out how to bring my villain, and this will make sense once you read the first book, how to bring my villain back to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I do something very interesting in book 2 with shadows and ghosts and souls. And it all got triggered in the grocery store when my sock started working its way down into my shoe.
Wait a minute. Wait, that's the question? Your shoe?
No, the question was, well, what happened in the grocery store was, how your sock wiggles its way down into your shoe and it's really annoying.
Yes.
Well, what I did was, the question I was trying to figure out was how to get my villain, who is actually murdered at the end of the first book, back to the surface where she can create more havoc in book 2.
Okay.
So I was thinking about that, and I'm in the grocery store doing my grocery shopping, and I had a loose sock that kept wiggling its way back into my shoe. And that's when everything clicked together. And I can't tell you what it's about because it's in book 2, but it happens to a lot of people on the surface. They lose their shadows, and it's all connected to their socks wiggling down into their shoes, and it all links back to the villain.
Okay, well, I still don't really so question,
you ask yourself a question and you kind of let the answer reveal itself. And however that answer is meant to reveal itself to you in your story context, just let it unfold.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with the structure per se of your,
Correct.
It's not about structure. It's not about inciting incidents. It's not about who gets the girl. It's not, or doesn't get the girl, or wins the prize or doesn't win the prize, or is she going to live or is she going to die? That is in your question. You as a writer is asking a question. Is that what I'm understanding you to say? It has nothing
I ask myself questions about the story.
Oh, okay. I love that.
And a lot of times, like when I'm really, really stuck, what I'll do is at night before I go to sleep, I'll pray on it and I'll ask the question, and I'm asking the question of God, what needs to happen next in the story? And I wake up the next morning with all the answers in my head, and I just start scribbling everything down. So the thing, and I think what that is, what I'm doing when I'm praying to God at night before I go to sleep, is I'm giving myself permission to unlock my subconscious and let it reveal itself to me.
Oh, Deborah, thank you so much. That was so helpful and so beautiful to share that intimacy that you have with God, and to share that. I'm really, really touched. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Oh, sure.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Victoria, do you have a comment?
I just have a question. It's a material question. Would you be willing, Deb, to fill us in about the range or the cost of that audio production that you did? I mean, is it thousands? Is it hundred? I mean, I have no clue.
Well, it's a certain amount of money per, I think it's 1,000 words. And I have 97,800 words in my first book. So the production of my first book was around, I'd have to check, but it was around $1,000.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Plus the other thing I did with my narrator is I shared the royalties with her.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Okay, that's nice. Oh, that's nice.
I wanted to get a good narrator, and my offer was generous. Usually it's either sharing the royalties or the money, but I was willing to do both with her because I really loved her narrative.
Very good.
Thank
Thank you.
Sure.
You go, girl.
God, it's good to see you.
I just like to reiterate on Deb's answer to the last question that Jill had. I think that we forget this regularly, is that we can ask our book for help, you know, and the books talk to us. And I have a friend who I'm very close with that's writing a book, and her book talks to psychics as well. You know, out in the coffee shop, they'll come up to her and say, I see these characters talking to me, you know, that are in her book. So these books do have a life of their own, and we are all able to tune in. I think I've learned a lot from Anaria, speaking with her about what she does. She's, you know, she's working in realms beyond the material plane. And I think that we all need continual reminders of this. And our books, we don't always think of that way. But I think that if we do have questions like Deb identified, that we can get the answers. And it's a wonderful idea to do it before you go to bed and let the subconscious mind take over at night and find the solution, so that in the morning we get up and we know. And I know from Deb, you know, talking to Deb, is that she knows when she has the answer. It's no doubt, no question. And that's what I'm going to leave everybody with, is in this process, never doubt yourself. Okay? It does not help at all, and we all go through it. We all have, you know, fits of self-doubt in this process. Is the book any good? Are people going to like it? Does the story suck? You know, whatever, right? And that, there's no place for that. There really isn't any place for that. So my advice is just to do the Zen breathing when we encounter that, and just let it go. Don't dwell on it. Don't fight it, but let it go. Don't give it any power.
That's a really good point, Rama. That is the best advice ever, because when you start, what do I want to say? When you start doubting yourself, or you start questioning yourself, that's when you let, you know, the doubt and everything creep in, and that'll stall you. That'll stall you for a good little while. By just letting go and just letting go of all the what do people think, what are people going to say, are they going to like it, did I do it right? Just know if you're on the path, you're doing it right, and for whoever you're writing it for, the book will find its audience on its own. Like I said, I thought I had a very narrow audience of paranormal young adult girls from 11 to 18. I was astonished to find out that everybody really enjoyed the book, and now I just write for a reader. I don't know who it is, but I know that it'll find its way.
You know, and let me say one more thing, because you triggered it when you just said write for the reader. Usually that understanding comes clearer with the second book. the first book we kind of write for ourselves many times. We write it for our own eyes, and we don't realize that we're writing it for a bigger audience than we had ever imagined. And when you get into the second book or subsequent books, you have a better understanding of the reader's eyes. So you fill things out that you didn't the first time. You realize that, oh my gosh, that may have been something that was known 30 years ago, but it's not known now. And you need to elaborate enough to give it the, give it some flesh. So that's something that I've been seeing a lot of lately. And, especially working with first-time authors. So I try to share that, to think about the reader's eyes a little bit more than our eyes as we're writing it. And it may be something that we have to get through that first book to really sense, better, but we can at least start to move in that direction. Anyone else with comments before I sign off today?
Yeah, let me, Deb, I confess I was typing out a little message to someone in the chat, and I missed what you were saying about choosing and the deal that you made for the audio. I did catch that you paid, about $1,000 and gave them a percentage of royalties, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Could I ask you how you chose this particular woman, I believe? Did you say it was a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Did you choose it based on the quality of her voice? Was there something relational?
No. She lives in New Hampshire, and I didn't know her before this started. You go on Audible or audible.com, and when I got the I put out my request for what I was looking for. And like I said, I did not structure that myself. The guys at Audible, I was on the phone with them. They were really, really helpful. They want to make you successful with what you're doing too.
You say you did not do what yourself?
I didn't. I wrote it out myself. But he gave me suggestions and hints as to what would attract a potential narrator to reading my story. And I'd have to go back on Audible and see what I'd written back then. But the thing you want to do when you're on Audible is you want to attract narrators to want to read your story. And then once you get their names, you go on Audible, you look at their profiles, you listen to other books they have narrated, and you're listening for what you want in the quality and style of your own book. And I just gradually weeded out, like there was one who read erotica, and the tone and quality of her voice did not match the story tone of my story at all. And reading your own work out loud will help you figure that out for what you're looking for with the way you narrate your own book. But it was just a process of weeding out, and I was able to weed out some right away, and there were a couple I really wanted, and there was one that wouldn't negotiate with me, and so she kind of knocked herself out of the running, and eventually I got to the one that was meant to read the book because she did a wonderful job.
So I'm gathering that you only looked to Audible for talent, is that correct? And right. I'm surprised that it's more than just an hourly rate. Apparently, some of these people have some history and some success in this, and feel that their voice is going to be a factor in the success of your book, so that they deserve a cut of the action.
Well, some of them had come with quite a biography, actors and actresses, screen and film and Broadway, that kind of thing. There were a lot of child actors that signed on that wanted to interview with me. And then the other thing I did to finish up the interviews was I got a couple of these people on the phone, and we spoke at length, and part of that process is determining if you're going to be able to even work with the person you're dealing with on the phone. Because there were a couple of those that weeded themselves out right away too.
How much did you actually have to work with them? Apparently you didn't just send the manuscript out and get an audio track back.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. Maria and I Skyped several times during the course of her doing the narration. We went over the pronunciation of all the characters' names. That was important because some of these names are kind of weird. And as with, paranormal stories, so she wrote down the pronunciations. There were a couple of scenes where she had to go back and redo them because there was something with the pronunciation that she'd gotten incorrect. And it's like anything you do, you may have to go over it a couple times. I listened to the audiobook 6 times to make sure that there were no errors in it. And it took about a month and a half to do. And like with writing your book, it's just going to take time. You're going to have to listen to it. I went over, there were 3 scenes that we had troubles with. I'm not sure what the deal was with on her end, but we finally got them the way I wanted them to sound. And it's really all about you anyway, because you're paying the money. So, and if you can't get it the way you want it from that person, then you move on to the next person.
Well, I'm asking for, I'm actually approaching this from the other side of it. I was asked to make a demo tape. And so I would then be in someone's talent stable. So I was just curious as to, with that in how you made your decision. So thank you. That helps.
Just to
It was
clarify.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
It was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting. I got a lot of feedback from several of the people who signed up who wanted to do the narrating of my book. And the other piece of this too is that you actually give them a 10-page sample that you want them to read of your book, and then they send you back their reading of your book, and you determine if their voice is really well suited or not well suited to doing the narration. And there were a couple of those that got eliminated right off the bat too, because of the way they narrated or the way they interpreted the book.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's like an interview, but it's all like oral and interviewing on the phone and stuff. But you either connect with that person and their voice and their narration style, or you don't.
Well, there's 2 levels of decision here, if that's the way to say it. Audible had to decide whether or not to pick your book up. And then, of course, you had to make a decision inside of that as to who you wanted to do the narration. I'm not sure how many different companies there are like Audible. And it sounds true, of course, but they have a different orientation. But you apparently went directly to Audible. Audible said, yeah, you have a product that we would like to sell.
Actually, Audible, they're in the business of wanting to create audiobooks. I'm not sure that they would turn anything down unless it was maybe pornographic.
Let me clarify this a little bit. Audible is the marketplace, okay? It is the Amazon, the sales end of things. It's an Amazon-owned company. The production company for audiobooks is a company called ACX.
Yeah.
So Deb really means that she spoke with the people at ACX, and they're the ones that helped her organize, her prospectus, okay? This is what, I need to request from the body of people that have signed up through ACX to produce audiobooks for authors. And they, the way ACX works is that there are, as Deb mentioned, various financial deals that you can make. And some of the production people want it this way. Some of them are willing to negotiate with you. Deb chose to pay the whole bill, which is not, I don't think that's the norm, actually. I don't know for sure.
Right.
And usually when an author chooses to pay the whole bill, they keep the whole profit, other than the fact that Audible makes their sales commission, like Amazon makes a sales commission on selling our books. So
Deb's book is going to be available on Kindle and everything else. It's not going to be strictly an Audible.
No, and actually they're all connected. I purchased Deb's audiobook through something called Amazon Matchbook, and they were running a deal, I think they still are, where if you buy Deb's Kindle version of her book, you can purchase, I think her Kindle version was $5.99. You can purchase the audio version for $1.99 through Kindle Matchbook. And I had to call because I saw the deal and I bought the Kindle, but I couldn't figure out, well, where's the audio book? How come I don't have that? So I actually had to call them to find out where and how I get the audio book from that sale. And it's really kind of a cool setup because by doing it, they download it to your Kindle device. And mine was my iPad with the Kindle app. Okay, and it's set up where I can listen to 10 pages of her audiobook, and if I want to start reading the Kindle, I open up the Kindle. It starts right where the audio left off, and so I can read, 2 chapters in the Kindle, and then go back to listening, and it's the audio picks up right where I stopped reading.
That's
so
very
it
cool.
is a very interesting setup that they have.
And $2 is the going rate for adding on the audio?
Well, it was in this case. I don't know, how they determine these things. Audiobooks normally are, somewhat pricey because there is a good-sized production on it. I don't remember what Catherine's charging for her audiobooks. I think initially it might have been $18 for her first one, and I think she's come down a little bit with it as a result. She's making good money off of her audiobook, but in addition to Audible, she has it available to download from her website, and she also has CDs available for people as well. So there are different, packages that you can set up. We did a webinar about a month ago with a guy named Steve Piper. It's up on the Rama On Writing YouTube channel. He is a audio book producer, lives down in Phoenix. Tom, you might want to contact him and tell him that you're interested in reading books and give him a voice sample. Because that's how he was describing, is that he looks at the book and then he kind of goes through his list of readers that he has, and he kind of tries to match up, 3 or 4 possible readers for your book, and then he gets a sample of them reading part of your book, just like Deb talked about, and those samples go to the author, and the author says, "Oh, I like the way Joe read my book."
Sure. Well, that's something. Let's remember to talk about that when I see you next week.
And then you can get lucky like Rama, okay? And I have to tell this story because I love these kind of stories, right? Well, a friend of mine comes by my house this week, a gal up in Flagstaff. She loved my book when she got it, and I think that the program director at KNAU had a crush on her. And for some reason, he did an audiobook production of my book for her. So right now I'm sitting with an audio version of my book, and it didn't cost me anything. I didn't know it was happening. I haven't, verified, how to turn it into a selling product. But, a lot of times in this whole process, our biggest successes happen unbeknownst to us, just by being confident in not doubting yourself, moving ahead with our social media, our marketing, to whatever degree we find a comfort level, like Lynn mentioned. And I'm glad you did this, Lynn, because you realize that, hey, I'm not going to do this every single day, but you didn't drop it completely. You realize that there is an important, component here, and you just cut back to what worked for you. And I admire your ability to make that decision and not basically ruin your life with social media if that's what was happening. And I think that we all really do that to some degree. But it was really good to hear that, because I think that's a critical component for all of us. We have to make some decisions. And the downside of those social media type things is that we may not see results at the front end. And we don't get our results until someone walks in with a copy of your audiobook, say, here, a friend of mine did this. So, just by getting yourself out there with your book, miracles happen. Well, everybody, it's been an interesting webinar. Next week, we're going to talk about Kickstarter with Marty Klein and hear how he went about doing it. Also hear what his documentary is about. And then we have a series of author interviews coming up. And just before Christmas, we're going to have Victoria come on board and do a clearing, repatterning. Excuse me, and then I'll probably take a couple of weeks off right around Christmas and New Year's to get enough Hawaiian beach time in. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great webinar.
Thank you, Rama.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you,
Rama. See
Deborah.
you all.